Okay, so let's talk about our fabric. The first material that I have here is an embellished embroidery material, very pretty. In the PDF you'll see a few different types of materials that I said you can use, and basically it's just what's best for your project, what you like. That's all it really boils down to, what's going to stand out, what you think is pretty, and what you find, because if you do some thrifting it's going to be about what you find available. If you go to a fabric store, which is where I got this, there'll be more varieties, but it's still based on what you like and what you find. Now this is 1/8 of a yard, which is really all you need when you go to a fabric store, because some of these can be pretty expensive. The embroidered materials, especially if you find them in the bridal section, they can be really, really expensive. But it just depends on where you go, where you find it. This may be a dress that you decide that you no longer want to wear, and it's like, hey, what can I do with this material? So this is 1/8. I've already cut into it a bit, but as far as the width, it's 1/8 of a yard, which is, you can get a good bit for a decent price with that. And on this you can see how much is here. You have enough to do a few different hats if you wanted to. I was able to cut out 2 pieces from this for the hat that I'm going to use, but there's definitely more here if I wanted to make another one. So let's get started on getting the little pieces cut out that we like. And what I told you in the PDF is to pick out material that has smaller embroidered or embellished designs, because you want it to be something that you'll be able to have multiple pieces on a hat, not just one huge piece that basically takes up the whole hat. So you find a nice section, look at what you have, even bring your hat with you, and it can be whatever type of hat that you like, but bring the hat with you if possible if you're going to a fabric store, so you can lay it out on top of it and see, you know, how it matches up with the color, the hat, the style, and so forth. But again, it can be any type of hat, and this isn't limited to a hat project. This is something that you can do on a jacket, a shirt, anything that you basically want to embellish. So we're going to take a little piece, in the PDF I gave you all your tools, your list of tools of items that you would need. These are some little tiny shears that are perfect. They're really sharp and have a nice little pointy tip, so you can get into all these little crevices and, you know, close places. And with this one, the sheer background is a tan color, and the hat that I'm going to be using is black. So I really want to get close, like really close, but not cut my threads as far as the embroidery goes, because if you cut your threads, then, you know, it's going to unravel. But it's pretty easy to get into this and cut it and not have any issues, as long as you have like some really small sharp scissors. So basically we're just going to start cutting, just trim it around as close as you can. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Once you get it cut out, I mean, you can even just do something like this to just get one piece taken out fast. And what I'm going to show you on the hat that I've already laid out, it took me maybe 20 minutes to cut a large piece that would cover the whole hat. So don't worry, this isn't something that's going to take you hours, you know, to do. It's pretty simple. So let's get that out of the way, and then we have one piece for a little sample, just so you can see how this works. So basically, it's going to cut. And you can see how fast it's already going. It's not really a big deal. And again, if you have a color that matches the hat that you're going to embellish, or the garment that you're going to embellish, whatever it is, you don't have to be quite as perfect, you know, getting this cut out, because it'll lay right on top, and it's sheer, so it's meant to disappear when it lays on top of, you know, a similar matching color. So now that we got that, and you see basically how you would cut that out, you can already see. Pretty detailed, pretty close. You can just trim off a little bit more as you go along, but you get the whole piece cut out and then just go in there with the details with your little scissors. So what I'll show you is what it looks like after I've already cut it out and put it on the hat. It hasn't been applied, but it's on there. So you can see, like I said, this is a black hat. But look, I've gotten pretty close, and you can only see a little bit around the edges there. But what I'm going to do with this to cover that up is use some black acrylic paint. And you want to use a paint that is a matte finish, because you can see this isn't a shiny material, the hat. So you don't want whatever little edges that you cover up to be shiny black. You want it to be matte and basically just blend in to where you don't notice it. So this is already cut out, and one thing you want to have is some common pins. Part of your kit supplies that you want to gather is maybe a little, this is from the dollar store, and it's just a little sewing kit, and it's from the dollar store where everything is actually $1. So got thread in here. These scissors, I mean the scissors really don't work, but at least you have everything else in here you need. There's a few sewing pins, and then there's some straight pins which I've already got stuck into the hat. You can see some of the pins there. So this is a really good kit to have, I mean just in general, for whatever you may need. Keep it in your car for emergencies, but I always like to have one of those. So you see I've already got some pins in there. So what you want to do is with your material, you want to find ways to lay it out that's going to, you know, look nice on the hat as far as where you're going to position it. You don't want to be haphazard and just like cut out some random pieces if you haven't really thought out where you're going to place it on the hat. The front is definitely nice. Going around to the side like I did is nice, and I tend to just keep it around the front and then going around to the back. And then of course you can see here where the cap folds in, and you've got your little opening for your ponytail or whatever. But I don't always do the whole thing. I mean, I don't want to get crazy with it. I usually keep one side open, but it's up to you. If you want to fully embellish it and just go wild, you can. And you'll see that there's some rhinestones on here. I'll show you how to do that as well. It's not in the video, but they are in my finished pieces, so I'll show you how we're going to do that. You want to put it on the stones before you actually apply it, glue it down to the hat, because you don't want to have to sew through the hat and then through the embellishments. That's just going to really be a tough time. So what we're going to do is, I've got this clear thread. I love this thread, and it's better than regular thread for something like this, because what I'm going to show you is the stones, they have a metal backing, and they have a little hole which can be sharp, almost like a blade, and can cut your thread. So if you happen to bump the rhinestone on something or whatever, you don't want it to eventually fray the thread that's holding it on, and then you lose your stones. And you can also use the glue-on type stones. You see the little crystals in different colors and the different shapes, and you can save yourself some time if you decide to just use your glue gun and glue those on individually instead of sewing them on. But these are what I have, and I really like these a lot. And I actually got them at a thrift store. They were on a pair of shoes, brand new shoes, and there was like tons of them. So I was like, hey, this would be great for a project. But you can get these at bridal stores, any place that has upscale materials or fabrics for gowns and things like that. You'll find it there, but not so much at basic fabric stores like Joann's and things. They don't really carry those types. They have more the glue-on type, which is cool if you want to do a totally different style. So I've also got my thread already done, and you don't have to knot it. I usually don't knot this, but I'll show you how to sew it through without doing a knot. So you're going to go through the top of the material, pull it through, and it's a little bit hard to see because it's clear. And before you pull the thread all the way through, you want to stop and hold it with your thumb so it doesn't come all the way through. And then you're going to go through, and if you have basic sewing skills as far as putting on a button, then you can easily do this. This is not a major project. This is basic to intermediate level DIY. So then you loop it through before you pull it through, and that's going to create a knot so that it doesn't come out. But I'm still holding this because it's a plastic thread, and it can slip through until you get a couple of knots in. So we'll do maybe 2 or 3 more. Pull it tight. And again, this is just for if you want to do these type of embellishments. You don't have to do them at all, but I like them. I think it gives a little extra, little pop to the whole design. And again, you can just use the glue-on stones. So as I showed you, these have little holes, and that's where you're going to sew through pretty much like a button. So you're just going to thread your needle through. And one thing you want to make sure of is when you get these, this is a bigger stone, but I also have some smaller ones. You want to make sure if you have smaller ones like this little one, your needle is going to be a good size to get through the hole. You don't want to buy a bunch of these and then find out you don't have the right size needle, and then you can't get through the hole to actually sew it on. So let's get back to the big one we've got here. So I've already gone through the holes on the stone, and just hold it with your thumb to the center. Hold it down and pull your thread through. Again, this is just like sewing on a button. It's nothing major, nothing hard. I'm making it look a little bit difficult because I'm trying to look through the camera at the same time. Then you go down through the other side and come back up. And you're just going to do this a few times until you get through the holes. The larger ones, they have pretty big holes, so it's pretty easy to do these. You can see through the hole there. And go to the other side. Go down. And I'll do this quickly, but you can do that. There's 4 holes, 1 on each side. So you want to get through all the holes so that it stands flat. And do it a couple of times so that it's not loose. It tightens up as you do a few more. So it's not, you know, flailing around on there. It'll stay. You don't want them to bounce around instead of lay flat. And on the back side, we'll just do those knots again where you pull it through, leave a little loop, and then go through the loop, pull it tight, and just do about 2 or 3 more of those. And this back side is going to be glued down, so you definitely know that your thread isn't going to come out and you lose your stones. So again, just go through all 4 sides a couple of times, loop it on the back, and then we'll clip it, and we're done. And that's how you can do your embellishments. So now you got a pretty stone on top. So now that we'll get back to the one that I've already cut out and I've laid out in a nice manner so that it's pretty embellished in the way that I want it to be. And I've got my pins in there because you don't want to get ahead of yourself, cut it all out, lay it on there, and then take it off, and then you try to lay it back and you just can't get it back in that great spot that you figured out works so well for the way you want your design to be. So save yourself the hassle. You can even take a couple of pictures once you've got it the way you want it to be so that you can look at that for reference as to where you're going to place it. And this helps you to figure out exactly where things are going to go so they're not running into each other or you're not running off of the space of the hat itself. So now all you need is your glue gun. And in the video, the PDF, I also said that you need a high temp. Don't cheap out and get one that's not a high temp. This is only, you can get this at a craft store. You can use a discount to get it if it's, you know, concerned about funds or whatever. But make sure you get the high temp, because what happens if it's not high temp, you put your glue on and then your embellishment starts to peel right back off, and you don't want that. Like after you've gone through all your hard work for it really not to be glued on there well, and then it starts peeling off after maybe one wear, if that, you know, at all. So take the time to make sure you get a glue gun that's actually high temp. So think about where you want to start placing things strategically before you get started, and it could be a little bit nerve-wracking if it's your first time, but just don't worry, you know, it's not the end of the world. But make sure you have your pins. So I'm going to start on this bottom section. You want to start someplace where it's kind of an anchor point, so that it's going to basically keep everything else in unison where you have it. Because if I start at the top here and then get down to my bottom, it may be off, you know, off of the seam here where I really want it to line up. So think about that when you're placing things, when you get ready to start gluing. Like where should you start? And from the bottom basically helps you disperse things out, because you can always stretch it and lay it to where it keeps its shape in a uniform way across the shape of the hat. So I'm going to start here. So basically just put a dab of glue, and the smaller gun is the best gun to have. Using the big gun, you lose a lot of dexterity as far as where you can get into little corners, and it allows you to put just really small amounts of glue on little points and tips and corners and places where you don't want a whole lot of glue to come running out and ruin your project. So stick with the high temp and stick with the small glue gun. So I'm just going to put a little bit right around the edge, and you want to get as close to the edge as possible so that the edges don't lift up. And you can use the tip to spread it around a little bit. And don't wait too long with it, because obviously we know the glue sets pretty fast, and you don't want it to cool off before you had a chance to lay it in the spot where you want it to be. So there we've already got that little portion down. And once you get started and you get a little bit down, your anxiety will decrease and you'll really get the hang of it and keep going. But already, just that little bit looks nice. And you don't have to get every little piece down. The way I put that down already pulls this to where I don't have to go behind here and try and get that little piece laid down as well. So don't go crazy trying to get every little corner or piece laid out. You'll be able to see what helps other areas lay down. So there, we've got that. And there'll be a lot of little strings. You could just pull those off. And if you get a little bit on there someplace, I use a little needle to pick off little bits of glue that I may accidentally, touch another area by accident. So now I've got my pin in this section. I can take it out because I've already pretty much laid this and I know where I'm going, and it's going to stay where I put it. And if you have some big globs that you put there, you don't have to press too hard because you don't want it to ooze out from around the edges and make a mess. So just pat it, and as it cools a little bit, you can keep pressing. But you'll see that you've got a good, it's laying down pretty well. So we'll do these little leaves here. I think I need to add another stick. Okay, we've got an glue stick. Make sure you have a few of these handy so that you're ready to go. Put another one in if you start to run out. So this is a project that's fun to do with someone else as well if you want, especially a mother-daughter kind of project if you want to have some bonding time and something cool to do together. Even have matching hats. And you can do this with other things as well, like embroidered words. I know people like to have cool sayings, especially if you don't have the funds to get a hat embroidered. You can get some patches and do this as well, pretty simple, but I like this because they're one of a kind. No one else will have the same exact hat that you have, and it's your project, something you created, and it's not just a store-bought thing that someone else can go buy the same thing and do the exact same thing. So there you already see it's coming out pretty nice. So again, like I said, you'll have a lot of little threads of the glue, but you can peel that off. Just pop them and they come off easily. So this one is laid down pretty tight because it's pulling from that direction, so I'm only going to put a little bit right at the edge there and not worry about getting behind it necessarily right now, unless I have to, but looks like I won't need to with this. And these hats, one thing I didn't mention, you can use whatever hat you like. A hat from home, a hat from the thrift store, Or you can order hats online. Like, there are tons and tons of hats in varying styles that you can get online. If you plan on doing these like in quantity, this brand I ordered online, and it's a really good one. Just make sure, one thing I found out when I ordered it, it had a green underside, which isn't a big deal, but you know, you can always paint it, because I definitely don't want it to be green on that side. I mean, that just adds to the project of something else you can do if you wanted to have a different color. But I definitely plan on painting that side black, because it can be seen when you're wearing the hat from a lower vantage point. So sometimes I'll take the pins out and see where some of these pieces really want to go, because you saw how that popped up when I took the pin out. It wasn't really down here, but as long as it gives enough stretch to where it's not going to make anything buckle, if that's where you want it, fine. But I think it looks a little bit better up there. So just take your time with it and feel it out as you go, so you get, you know, the best result for what you're doing. I am going to put a little on the bottom of this side though. And be mindful when you're working. I have a habit of doing this, but make sure you put your gun down, because you don't want to be doing something and more drip out someplace else on your hat and ruin it, or you accidentally bump it up against the hat and ruin it by putting glue somewhere that it doesn't need to be. So get in the habit of putting your gun down as you know, stick a piece down that you've already put some glue on, so that doesn't happen. But you can see this is pretty simple and pretty easy. This is something you can do in like maybe an hour and a half, as far as actually doing the gluing after you've cut and everything. It took me 20 minutes to cut all of this out. So it's not something that's going to take you all day to do. But I mean, if you've got nothing else to do, what does it matter anyway? It's a fun project, and you'll really like the results when you're done. It makes it look really expensive, and it's a nice quality, especially depending on what type of material you put on. If it looks cheap, it's gonna end up looking cheap in the final result. So get something nice, some nice material. And like I said, 1/8 of a yard really isn't much, even if it is an expensive fabric to begin with. Something that's $60, maybe like a yard, may only be maybe $10 for 1/8 of a yard, if that. So just keep that in mind. So this is coming out really, really nice. And this is why it pays to have a little gun, because if you do want to get those little stems right there, you can, without putting, you know, too much glue on it and ruining it. And one thing I also do sometimes, after I've gone over the whole thing, if there are little spots that are sticking up, I put a little glue on the tip of a needle and get down in there easily with the needle point to add some glue in a spot that I couldn't really get to with the tip, because it was just gonna, you know, put down too much glue. So little areas like this, I might go back with the needle and do that if I can't get in there with the glue gun, and if I'm afraid I'm gonna make a mess. But I think this one is, you can get this. Just barely tap it and you'll get just a little bit of glue on the end. And if you're nervous about this, take a piece and practice with it first, putting it on something else before you get going, so that if you are a little nervous about, you know, putting it down and you want to try it out, that's fine, do that. And that way you'll be a little more confident when you get ready to do it. But again, it's not a big deal. So we've already got the front done, and that was maybe 15 minutes. So, alright guys, so I'm going to keep going with this. I'll show you a picture of the final, but this is pretty much all it takes to do your embellished hat. Thank you for joining, and I hope you have a good time doing yours, and feel free to send me some pictures of your final projects as well. I would love to see how they turn out, what you come up with, and your ideas, and how it worked out for you. Thank you.